Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So here I basically have what's going to be the best news of 2026 so far if you are a Sega Dreamcast or Nintendo GameCube fan. That is because the developers basically ported over a new software development kit for Dreamcast, KallistiOS, over to the GameCube and has a proof of concept port of Super Mario 64 running on GameCube based upon the actual port to Dreamcast that you're watching right now. It is many layers of the onion deep, and I'll definitely explain it as best as I can, but this is definitely something that's going to blow the doors open on both Dreamcast as well as GameCube in the future. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. So what you're seeing right now is actual footage of this port running on the GameCube based upon the Dreamcast version of the game, and that is definitely no small feat in any way, shape, or form. It is absolutely insanely impressive stuff from start to finish. This is done by a developer by the name of Eric Fridella, and you might hear another name familiar in this video in just a bit, Falco Gurgis, who absolutely just destroys it when it comes to the back-end technology of what the Dreamcast can actually do. And when I say there is a metric crap ton of heavy lifting in all of the code and efficiencies on the Dreamcast side of things that are now going to be brought over into the GameCube, I 100% mean it. This is levels of coding that probably only like 1% of people out there can do, even if somebody like Falco is always modest in his abilities when he actually is working on Dreamcast. And just so you know, I have left links in the description below to the Twitter page of Eric, so you can read all of the different responses, watch the video in full, and just kind of get a sense of what's going on here. But the TLDR, if this gets a little bit too complicated, is now basically you can bring over Dreamcast code into the GameCube. So something like the Super Mario 64 port developed here for GameCube as a proof of concept is running on the Dreamcast version brought over to the GameCube. And that is in any way, shape, or form no small feat whatsoever. It is a massive accomplishment even if it isn't done. Now, if we take a look at Eric's page here, it goes into a more in-depth explanation, as does Falco's explanation, which I will both leave links for in the description. But basically, you have to remember that Dreamcast's SH4 CPU does not use the same instruction set as the PowerPC CPU inside of a GameCube. Instruction sets are basically how the processors function and how they actually end up processing anything in the end. And just because something actually runs does not mean it's running in the same way in any way, shape, or form. There's going to be enhancements as well for the Gecko CPU, and I love that they're calling it Geckomancer, almost like Necromancer, bringing the GameCube back from the dead, just like people are bringing Dreamcast back from the dead. And if this doesn't sound familiar, don't forget, both Grand Theft Auto as well as Vice City have been ported over to the Dreamcast. Basically, people are finding out that the Dreamcast was way more powerful and can get way more efficiency out of it than was ever known back in the day, and big thanks to Falco as well for doing a lot of that code on the SH4 math side of things. There's just ways to get more horsepower out of this hardware than anyone knew back in the day, and that's basically because the Dreamcast was barely on retail store shelves, it felt like at least, until Sega canceled it, so you never got to see any of those late stage Dreamcast games, what they could have done back in the day. And this footage is from a work in progress beta that I talked about a while ago. It has improved since then, but with time, knowledge, and a little bit of brute force, we're just going to have to make it work. Dreamcast can do things in 2025 and now 2026 that it never could do back when it was on retail shelves, and that is now being extended out to the GameCube, which is going to be insane. Now, of course, this is still the early days, so not everything is going to be working perfectly, and every single port is a high-touch sort of thing. This is not the type of application where you just drop in a Dreamcast game, go ahead and hit port to GameCube, and suddenly you have a GameCube file that you can run on real hardware or via emulation. And that is why you'll see here in some of this footage from Eric, there's definitely some issues as far as the overall polygons and how they are rendering. Sometimes Mario basically has half an invisible head, and I'm fairly confident that's not what it looked like when you actually played the game. But this is the type of stuff I'd love to see. When the N64 core was in active development for Mr. FPJ, we had so many different issues in the graphics, 3 Mile Island Pikachu being my favorite, who had a third eye in the middle of his head, and those things just absolutely make me laugh. And if you're not familiar, KallistiOS, at least I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, I've never heard anyone say it, is an independent software development kit for the Dreamcast. Basically, that software development kit from back in the day that developers would have used. This is a brand new version written from the ground up to be able to develop Dreamcast games and be able to develop them more efficiently and get better gains out of the hardware than Sega's official SDK. And that is why you see so much new stuff for the Dreamcast all the time. It has a modern, robust coding environment and software development kit that just works so much better than anything Sega made. And now that that's basically been ported over to function on the GameCube as well, you're going to be seeing working even more. And Falco here talks more about how that functions and how you're going to get those math gains in the CPU. Trust me, it gets very deep. Even I maybe only understand like 90 to 95% of it, and I can get lost. Just so you know, if you do watch the video from Eric on Twitter, there is currently no audio, so it doesn't seem to be working. But the good thing is, it probably will sound exactly like the Dreamcast port of Super Mario 64. So go ahead and listen to what that sounds like, and I'll be right back with a lot more technical information. So hopefully at some point in time you'll hear that audio coming out of a GameCube. I want to talk about what this really means, because off the top I feel like people are thinking to themselves, do we really need another Super Mario 64 port or another Grand Theft Auto Vice City port? The reality is we're not just talking about things that currently exist. If that OS and actual software development kit can compile and get ported over to GameCube, that means that somebody who's working on a new Dreamcast game could then make a build for GameCube, kind of streamlining those efficiencies, because I am not aware of any other modern GameCube dev environment. If you know of one, leave me a comment down below. So don't just think this means that you're going to be playing Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, Grand Theft Auto 3 on GameCube. Of course, it does mean that, at least in part, but that is not the full reality of the situation here. And just think, if people decided that they wanted to actually get existing Dreamcast games booting on GameCube and running maybe even better, that is also potentially an option in the future. But again, these are all high-touch developments. When I say high-touch, I mean that requires a lot of input, a lot of time, a lot of code from developers that are working on them. Because a lot of times people seem to think that this software functions almost like magic, and I totally get it. When you play the finished product, it kind of does feel like magic. But the reality is there's people working dozens upon dozens, hundreds upon hundreds of hours to actually make these things work. And I'm sure in Grand Theft Auto's instance, probably thousands upon thousands of hours. So this doesn't mean that suddenly the entirety of the Dreamcast library or all of those ports are magically going to start running on GameCube. It means they can start running on GameCube. I'm sure more code efficiencies will have to come in and more revisions of this will have to happen. But just think of Star Fox 64. We saw that as a Dreamcast port. We have a PC port as well as an N64 static recomp. But it could actually be pivoted over to GameCube in the future as well. And that would definitely be a fun future to live in. And this, in my opinion, is why retro gaming is making a comeback. We're seeing so many technological advancements as far as retro gaming is concerned. We have N64 decomps, recomps, and PC ports. We have stuff like Dreamcast ports of N64 games, and even stuff like Grand Theft Auto 3. And now we're going to live in a future where you can actually use one software development kit to bring over content from the Dreamcast to the GameCube. On top of all the different ROM hacks and emulation improvements we get, we are definitely in a new golden era of retro gaming, and that is definitely one I love to see. And again, this stuff is not easy because that SH4 CPU, it only functions on a certain instruction set because it's a certain part. Removing that over to PowerPC is not an easy thing, and Falco's done a lot of work on the math end of things, the things that definitely break my brain when I hear of them, and you're going to be getting more efficiencies when it comes to actually running this code on GameCube. And that in and of itself is wild times. When you were a kid and you always thought to yourself, wouldn't it be great if this game could run on this console, when you realized that all discs weren't the same and you couldn't just put a disc in one console and have it boot on the other? Well, we're kind of almost getting to that make-believe reality where you're able to run one game on a different console it was never meant for. Of course, it's highly technical and it isn't that simple whatsoever, but it is absolutely promising, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest developments as far as Dreamcast and GameCube go in 2026. But I always love answering this question as well as asking it. If you could snap your fingers and make one game go from Dreamcast to GameCube in the blink of an eye, which one would it be? For me, it's actually The Lost Golem, a game that I wish everyone would play, and basically 99 out of 100 people have never heard of before. Maybe LOL Lack of Love after that as well. But this is the footage from Eric running on GameCube, obviously temporary and kind of work in progress, but he did this apparently in an afternoon, and that is absolutely insane. Imagine if you spent maybe 2 weeks, 40 hours each trying to do this, you'd probably have the most perfect port of Super Mario 64 ever to exist. and moving back over to the Dreamcast port, this is just a ton of fun, because retro gaming keeps getting better and better every single week, and I can barely even keep up with all the news at this point in time, but you know full well, I will continue to work to make sure you know about each and every fun development in retro gaming. So this one is straight up a 10 out of 10. I'm super optimistic to see what it does in the future, but leave me your thoughts, comments, and your game pick down below to get ported to GameCube. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.